Twitch, what are you doing?
Oh, I just started reading that Assassin's Creed graphic novel that I mentioned to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, based on my research too, I discovered that it is an English translation of a French series. So this is adapted from the French Assassin's Creed series. So it'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
You know you're reading that upside down?
Oh.
So that means we're gonna have to review Silent Hill 3D.
Oh.
Welcome guys, Maniac here, joined once again by Twitch.
Oh.
For GameAccess.net. You and I both saw Silent Hill Revelation 3D today, in 3D, at our local movie theater. I have been looking forward to seeing it since probably about a week before the movie came out. I finally had a chance to see it today. I saw it with you.
And I actually had no idea this movie even existed.
Yeah.
It had a very, didn't have a big buzz behind it.
I hadn't even heard about it was coming until I saw it, the trailer for it posted on Konami's YouTube channel. Before that, I didn't even know the movie was coming out.
This was a much, I think, a long in production sequel after the first Silent Hill, which was not a failure by any means. It wasn't a huge success either.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the first one.
I saw the first one. It was kind of, it kind of like, okay, we're gonna. To me, it's the first Silent Hill was like, okay, we're gonna have plot points X, Y, and Z, and we're gonna get to them by the most standard means. You know, like, okay, so we need to have this. This was in the game. That was in the game. Let's just whatever means of story we have to get there to connect the dots. Which is ultimately, I guess, the same thing I could say about Silent Hill Revelations.
Exactly, it did have that problem as well. It did seem, though, like they were trying to, at least in this game, exactly.
Because it doesn't feel like watching a movie. It feels like you're watching somebody play a game.
It feels like you're right, exactly.
In a way, not a bad thing, because I guess too, I can't say I hate the movie. The movie was not a success, but I can't say it was a failure either.
The thing was about the movie that the movie seemed to be a straight adaptation of Silent Hill 3, and
more
pretty
loose
much
adaptation, I would say.
But well, yeah,
it takes a lot of liberties, but yes,
but I mean, when it comes down to the structure of it, granted, they did swip out some characters for certain scenes and stuff like that, but the beat for beat for beat. Now, granted, I did not play through Silent Hill 3, but I did see Dina Natale's review of it. It did seem like a pretty straight...
It's in the same way that the first Silent Hill movie was an adaptation of the first Silent Hill game, with, some larger liberties taken. The main one being that it's about Rose, I believe.
Right, Rose was the main character.
Mother, instead of it being Harry. There's a few big liberties taken with this one. For the most part, yes, this is an adaptation of Silent Hill 3.
Well, I mean, it starts off in the first scene in the movie is the amusement park sequence.
Spoilers, by the way.
But you know what? Actually, I take it. I'm not going to spoil up anything that much. And, we're going to pull it back a little bit. Now, obviously saying this, for anybody who's played Silent Hill 3, I'm not going to spoil anything right now. So we're going to cut spoilers, okay? So no spoilers, we're not going to talk about spoilers. And we may discuss scenes, but we won't change anything. If we do make references to Silent Hill 3, they'll only be references that people would be aware of. I'll be vague about them. If you played through Silent Hill 3, you'll probably know what I'm talking about or what you're talking about. But I swear, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody. So just go see it.
Or me.
Well, yeah. Well, if you really want to go see it or something like that, I'm not going to tell you to stop you. And even you and I think both agree that the movie is not terrible by any means. But the problem is that it's not that good either. I mean, it does do some things very well.
Spectacularly average, which is kind of an accomplishment. I mean, it doesn't technically do anything wrong except maybe just
there are two or three
scenes that really just throw logic out the window. It's like, okay, it's like really they had a checklist. Okay, Silent Hill. What do people know about Silent Hill? Okay, fog. Have a foggy city. Check. Pyramid Head, who again has no part canonically with the games with the Heather.
Mm-hmm.
That's
she was James Sunderland's guy. Yeah.
But regardless, Pyramid Head. We gotta have him anyways. Check. Sexy nurses. Check. So
and I'm going to talk about that later.
So it seems more that the movie was this one, especially compared to the first one, which actually wasn't too bad. The first one, I do have issues with.
Again, I haven't seen it.
But this one, it kind of was more okay. checklist and write a story around it, even though they kept relatively close to the source material.
Right. So I have a few things I want to start off with. First off, I thought the visuals were fantastic. I thought they captured the visual style very well of the look of the games.
That part, I thought I was actually watching the game.
Yeah,
which,
there were a lot of nods and stuff like that inside the set pieces. Again, there's no spoilers here, but like every once in a while, you know how you carry the map with you and stuff like that? There, you can actually see a map on one of the
there
walls.
There was a great visual...
That was, yeah, we were laughing when we saw that.
It was literally just like printed out straight from the game.
Yeah, it looked like the identical map from the game. And it was just kind of funny because the layout was completely different than what that map said. But you know what? I'll let that one slide. I didn't really consider that one of the errors. There were obviously locations and stuff like that were traded for some of the games. Locations mentioned that were traded for some of the games. I won't go too much into spoilers because there were a few throwaway lines, and normally I'm against throwaway lines, but it worked here under these circumstances.
I mean, because for a video game movie, right now we can't take them 100% seriously.
Exactly. Now, in other cases, like there'll be a throwaway line in other things where you'll make a reference to this, you make a reference to that, and I usually feel bad about that. They did it now. They did it in the Max Payne movie, and I hated when they did the Max Payne movie. But I thought it was okay here because the town was so big to begin with, and everything else. There's so many events, there's so many venues, the story is so long. Throwing a line like, "Oh, I'll meet you at Happy Burger." To me, at least they know that there's a Happy Burger in the universe. Obviously, we don't have time to go to Happy Burger or something like that, but it made sense.
But then also, too, like the visual cues that you were saying, it did have a lot of great nightmarish creatures from Silent Hill. So, again, the beginning of the third game, it begins with the dream sequence of which... Not really. I don't consider it a spoiler if it's like the first 3 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's really. I know.
The movie
just saying. Okay, the opening. You saw it in the previews. It is in the previews. They go to the amusement park. It is exactly
the opening. So you see like the severed bunny rabbit heads, stuffed rabbit heads that are like bloody, like in the game. Visual cue in the movie. The visuals in that movie were perfect. The carousel in the film, where as it starts corrupting into Silent Hill, the horses turn into bound gagged men, which. Why? I'm not sure, but it was kind of disturbing, which is, I guess, ultimately the point.
Yeah, there were some very disturbing images in the game, but you know,
but nothing that probably would really upset you if you're a fan of the series.
Again, I don't want to really talk about the one thing that did upset me in the scene. It was an appearance of a character that I thought kind of should have been. You know, I thought the character had a better appearance first. I really didn't think the character was necessary in that scene. And I think you guys know who I'm talking about, so I'm not going to say it. But there was a character that appeared in that sequence that I didn't think had a good introduction. But later on, when they appeared in the movie, in a different scene about halfway through the movie, had a pretty good scene. And I said to myself, this should have been their first scene. That I would have thought worked better as an introduction to the character. I won't say who. You'll watch the movie, you'll see. What?
But then I guess, you know, well, seeing a track, okay, so we like the visuals.
Right.
The audio was great too. I mean, a lot of
definitely creepy.
The music was definitely lifted from.
They ported the music right on.
The music, the actual, I guess, score was credited to a different guy. I forgot his name, but Akira.
But they used his tracks.
Yeah, so I will not get his last name.
Akira, we can't pronounce it, but Akira's tracks, like at least 4 or 5 of his tracks were used, and they were used frequently. Yeah, most of the movie was his tracks used. And I thought used beautifully, yeah.
And then, too, it seems like a lot of the sound effects of the creatures were lifted straight from the game. So, I mean, honestly, it did have its good fan service. How about acting?
Well, you both said that the guy who played Harry. I agree.
Sean B.
I thought he did a great job.
You can't really get it back before.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
The girl that played Heather, I actually she did a serviceable job. I mean,
I thought she did a good job too.
Again, too, seeing her walk, and especially in Silent Hill, I thought, whoa, it straight out of Silent Hill 3. So I was actually quite impressed.
They got her look down perfectly.
She got good mannerisms. You kind of believed her. So I guess that's a good.
She acted properly. I thought. Now again, I haven't really played too much of Silent Hill 2. I'm sorry, Silent Hill 3. But yeah, I thought that's kind of like how Heather would act. What do you think?
Yeah, so I thought she did a fine job. Mm-hmm. Then, out of nowhere, Malcolm McDowell.
Your favorite guy from The Clockwork Orange.
I mean, you know what?
Seriously, I would not follow Malcolm McDowell to the front door of my own house. If I saw Malcolm McDowell walking down the street, specifically how he looked in this movie, I would turn and run. Yeah, no offense, Malcolm, but you scare me, okay?
Yeah, so those of you that are unaware that he was in the movie, I had no idea he was in the movie. yeah, that is him. And then also too, like the surprise appearance by Carrie-Anne Moss, which did not know she was.
I didn't know that was even her until I saw the credits. They did something to her face with either prosthetics or makeup or something like that.
She
played a well-known character. Yeah, she played Claudia. I didn't know that was her until they started rolling the credits.
It kind of like, oh, duh, of course that's her. But so
it looks like Claudia. It really did.
So a lot of good surprising actors in this movie that I did not expect.
Mm-hmm.
How about the 3D? Ooh.
Okay. I kind of wanted to say this till later, but if you want to talk about the 3D right now, that's
what do you want to talk about next?
Well, what I wanted to talk about was what my problems with the movie was. I mean, we were talking about like the actors were good, the story was decent, it wasn't great, it did have some problems with it, but I kind of had a feeling with this movie was that the movie just seemed like somebody had changed some things in it. Now, the whole idea behind Silent Hill that I at least thought was, you have a screwed up story, you put it in a screwed up appearing atmosphere or something like that. That's scary. That's what scares you. You're a normal person inside of a messed up circumstances that I thought was scary. And you know what? At least 75% of the movie was that. So I got to give it that. The problem was that 25% that wasn't that was the first, I don't know, 10 or so minutes of the movie. When I started watching it, I was getting ready to walk out by about the first 10 minutes. Now, I admit that the what do you call it sequence, the amusement park sequence visually was very interesting. But that first 10 minutes was like jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. And the jump scares really didn't end until they came to Silent Hill. I was like, what is this? Did somebody like change the opening? Was this like, because it's like the first part of it, what did you think of that? I mean, they had a jump scare over freaking toaster pop pastry. I swear to God, there is a jump scare in the first 5 minutes of the movie that's over toaster pastry. Okay, I understand having jump scares, but that's not something you need to do a jump scare for. Let us relax for a minute.
I would say I probably did not jump a single time, and I was not terrified at all by the toaster. So I mean, it
wasn't just that, but when the pastry came up, the loudest sound it possibly.
Well, I would kind of tie that to again, like, well, my issue would be the 3D. It was gimmicky 3D. I mean, yes, for the most part, as we did comment before, 3D was mostly used for depth purposes.
Yeah, and you were telling me that you had a problem understanding some of the depth, because I thought one of the coolest effects was actually a more subtle effect.
Oh, no. There was a lot of gimmicky 3D. Like, we're throwing stuff in the screen. That's gimmicky 3D, and I thought
the opening bits with the ash, when the ash is coming towards you during the title credits, I like that. I thought it was gimmicky, but it was okay.
That's.
I have seen 3D documentaries that have done that effect to begin with.
That's not really gimmicky. Yeah. That's not really gimmicky. That's a pretty decent use of 3D. And again, too, a lot more of the movie was just more depth because again, too, it takes a while to actually get into Silent Hill, say. A lot of the exposition or whatnot. So I prefer just that. But when there's a lot of like, swords, stab you, that's stupid.
There was one of these effects.
Blood splashes.
Yeah, blood splashes I thought worked. Okay, the blood splashes I disagree with. We disagree with this one. That's why I wanted to have you on here. Because I know you had feelings that you wanted to share about the movie that I disagreed with. So that's why I wanted to have a second person review this with me. Plus we saw it together.
So like, I mean...
I disagree with the blood splashes.
So I mean, the only option to see this movie was in 3D. Had I had the choice, I would have preferred to just take it, just see them in 2D.
But you also said that you prefer your movies in general in 2D, which is understandable. A lot of people agree with you. I honestly could care less one way or another, but since I'm going out to the theater, I might as well see it in 3D if it's offered. I mean, I could care less one way or the other, but like I said, if I'm going out, I might as well get my time's worth. That's how I feel about it, at least. Like I said, I do disagree with you about the 3D effect. I like the depth effects. There's a few effects in the movie, and again,
I never said I didn't like the depth effects.
Okay, you didn't like the gimmicky effects. I didn't think that they got too gimmicky. I really didn't. I thought that at a point or a time where they would get gimmicky, or at the very least, would have a protrusion or something like that out of the screen, it didn't bother me like it did you. I mean, I didn't think of them as gimmicky as you do, I guess, because I like the 3D effect in the movie. I wish they had used it more, but... Maybe then if they had...
It takes you out of the movie, in my opinion.
And again, I guess we disagree. We agree to disagree on that one. One of my favorite 3D effects, if I may say, again, not spoiling anything, there's a scene where Heather is running down a corridor. I'm not spoiling anything there, I hope. But there is a scene where she is running down a corridor, and what happens is that the corridor seems distorted because of the 3D effect, where the depth of the screen is actually almost like it's jarring. It's supposed to be jarring. The corridor is supposed to feel otherworldly at the moment, which is cool, which is what we want. So she's flat in the foreground, and you can see her clearly, but the 3D effect is distorting the background kind of heavily because it's a narrow corridor. It kind of feels like it's going on and on and on and on.
An endless.
You're right, exactly. Like she's been running forever almost. I like that. I like that effect.
Oh no, I agree. And that would be my general opinion too. For this is my general opinion for pretty much all 3D movies. Again, too, if you use it more subtly, you're succeeding.
Yeah, but some people would say if you use it subtly throughout the entire movie, you didn't even notice it. Like, I thought Captain America's, one of Captain America's was subtle, but nobody even noticed that they even had 3D when they were watching the 3D effect.
Well, and then again, too, I would kind of then have to contradict myself a little bit. I did see episode 1 in 3D, and oh, sorry, Jorge, Anakin Skywalker will never have any depth. All right. I didn't even notice that was in 3D, actually, to be fair.
Okay, so that aside, back to the movie. It kind of felt to me like they were trying their best to bridge a story between this movie. It kind of felt like the first movie was kind of tying them down. If they had really wanted to, I think that what would have worked better for this movie is if they had cut all ties with the first movie and just done the third game completely. Not talked it, but they did. They kind of felt like they kind of had it. They wanted it. It kind of felt like the writers and the director just wanted to do the third game. I will have to stop
you right there. Silent Hill 3 is a direct sequel to the first game.
Exactly, you're right.
So that would be kind of impossible.
No, I didn't mean like they wanted to cut off from the first game. I meant from the first movie. It kind of felt like
the first movie was an adaptation of the first game.
Right, exactly. So
no, that would have been kind of impossible. What you're saying, what you're suggesting.
They could. They did some flashbacks. Like you could go into this movie and not seeing the first movie or the other side of the games, because they did some flashbacks and there was some exposition being told, and it was recent. They even did an exposition scene in Silent Hill 3 the game. I know this. They did do that sequence in the movie. I liked how it was done in both cases, although they changed a few things around. I liked in both cases how the exposition was done, with one or two exceptions in the movie. I can't really talk too much about the game because I didn't play those sequels. I don't know if there was any further exposition. But I did like, there was a parallel exposition scene between the movie and the game. They just changed one or two of the characters. I liked both of them. I thought it worked. You know, I thought both worked. I thought maybe at some point after that the movie got a little bit too heavy on exposition, but you know what? That's just me. You know, maybe if I watch it a second time, which I could, or watch a director's cut later on that was extended.
Yeah, that the cult of Silent Hill. You know, that takes up a lot of the exposition. Just kind of really bombarding you with all this information on why Silent
Hill is bad. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of not really explained too well, especially in regards to certain confrontations, let's say, where how things happen and get resolved. You know, there's really no explanation as to why, but I guess it's mostly just assumed because of this mythology behind Silent Hill, which they do try to explain for the context of the movie, but they kind of don't enough to.
Okay.
You know, because I know you guys, you're saying like one of the climatic scenes when these two characters confront, and one of them just, hey, what happened? How did this get resolved? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was kind of confusing. That was towards the big climax of the movie, and I had a problem with that as well. It was just one of the scenes to me that kind of made very little sense, and it wasn't explained very much. And it kind of noticed later on, after that sequence, it almost sounded like somebody's dialogue had been dubbed during the sequence where they discussed the previous scene, which kind of told me that something was either going to be longer for that sequence or something had changed in that sequence. Like that sequence was like a reshoot, or it was something that was cut down. Like something further was supposed to have either happened or something different was supposed to happen in the original script. And they changed it either because of studio pressure or for time. And what happened was that scene was edited, or the final scene, the big final scene in the movie, was edited based upon a different confrontation sequence, and a line had to be redubbed, and it was very badly redubbed too. I noticed it immediately.
So that would be a good point too, because like the movie's only 90 minutes long.
It does seem like it needs
waste some time.
Right.
So yeah.
It did seem like there were some sequences and confrontations and stuff like that should have been longer. There were or better explained, and then there was some stuff that was just over-explained and not necessarily explained. You don't need to go on and on about why Silent Hill is evil. I kind of can figure that one out on myself.
I think part of the horror of the game is not knowing exactly what's going on.
Right.
So really trying to nail home an explanation. That's kind of tough. But again, too, that it's the problem of two different mediums. I mean, at least from my experience playing the Silent Hill games, you're more experiencing the journey for yourself. If you want to know more about the backstory, you know, you can't find out about it. But it's not, well, especially in reference to 2. You know, arguably the greatest in the series. You know, it's just kind of there. If you want to look more into the background in that game, you totally can. But otherwise, it's really just a story about James, and that's kind of more the strength of it. You don't really need to know why Silent Hill is. You know, it's more.
Okay, it is. Deal with it. You know,
exactly.
Survive.
But whereas I guess, but you could probably get away with that better in a game. But whereas a movie, people kind of do want more.
I thought the movie worked pretty well, and to explain why she was there, I thought that worked perfectly. You don't really need to go any further
I'm saying
than that.
That's the difference between movie and games.
Right.
Movies, you need to kind of give more of that why sometimes.
Mm-hmm. But they did. I thought that her reasons for being there genuine. Her reasons for you know, that was all perfect. I got that.
But as far as
the only scene I really had a problem with, and I know you had a problem with this as well, other than the climactic battle we were just talking about, was the scene with the introduction of the nurses.
Yes. So.
And the only scene with the nurses. I thought the nurses needed to be in more of the movie.
So this wouldn't I wouldn't constitute this as a spoiler.
Right. There are nurses in the game.
So.
I'm sorry. There are nurses in the movie.
So. The short of it.
I won't. A character is sentenced to be reprimanded. We're not going to say who, and we're not going to say why. Just that it's reprimanded, confinement, not death, not torture, just confinement.
But you know
this character is then wheeled into a.
Well, first you just see the room full of nurses.
Right, the room is full of nurses,
and they're not moving.
Right, so they would have known that they were in there. Whoever did this, the order would have known.
So 2 men brought in their prisoner into this room,
and they were ordermen.
And the nurses go nuts. These men try to corral the nurses into order, but
with stun guns.
But you know, they get more and more violent and start attacking and slashing them. And then once they're dead, and it's silent, they stop.
Right.
You know, which makes sense. Well, okay, them stopping and well, it's established. It's established within Silent Hill canon that monsters get attracted by loud noises and then like by light. So you know, if you have your flashlight on in the game, that's going to attract more monsters.
Right. And it was established,
which makes sense.
And it was established that the nurses were only moving when there was sound.
But the problem is, why would they
bring him in there? And plus, on top of that, number one, they would have known. They had to have known that they were in danger. If they were members of the Order, they lived in Silent Hill. They would have known the nurses were in that room.
They clearly knew the nurses were in
there. The nurses were capable of killing. They had weapons. They had syringes, knives.
But these orderlies had weapons to subdue the nurses, so they knew there were going to be nurses in that room too. And they could have known the rest.
Their objective was to hold the nurses back.
We're being obnoxious. We're being incredibly loud. They had. Why?
Why would they bring this? So the whole objective was to bring the man that they were a prisoner in that room.
And it's perfectly established minutes before that there are actual cells to lock this prisoner.
Right. They could have just put him in a cell. So why would you bring him into that room if not to kill him? And you were under orders not to kill him. In fact, it was made quickly clear by your boss, Claudia, ordered confine him. Don't kill him. Don't torture him. Maybe a little bit of brainwashing, but no death. And there's a very good reason, which we will not go into, why she didn't want to kill him. Very good reason. We're not going to go into why because it would spoil something. But very good reason, totally genuine. Why would they bring this man in there if not to kill him? And they did it for their own personal risk because both the Order members were killed. Why would you do that? Why would you bring him in this room? It's never explained.
Just
that was like the one thing that got me. That was like the one thing that got me.
And I would say, what 3 things does Silent Hill need? Fog, Pyramid Head, and the horrifying nurses. So that's probably the only reason. How can you squeeze
They wanted to do the nurses scene. There were so many other opportunities they could have used for the nurses. The nurses could have appeared anywhere else in the hospital that they were in. In fact, actually, there was an opportunity where they could have had an altercation with the nurses in one of the hallways. Nurses appear in the hallways. It happens. It happens in Silent Hill 2 all the time. There was actually a scene where Heather fights someone in the hospital. Okay, it's in one of the hallways. I'm not spoiling anything because you just know what's going to happen eventually.
You know there's going to be
altercation. But she didn't fight a nurse. Like, why isn't she fighting a nurse? She's fighting somebody that I had not recognized. Did you recognize them?
I did not.
You don't have to say what it was,
I'm
but
sure.
which is something I didn't recognize. It kind of made sense, but it wasn't in the game.
It could have been a scene where because earlier too, she stumbles across other people too in Silent Hill.
Yeah.
That have the misfortune of wandering there, so she could have just walked into this hospital, saw what appeared to be a nurse. Oh, excuse me, can you help me? She turns around and wields a knife. That could have been a good.
That would have worked fine. If you want to introduce the nurses, that's how you would have done it. Why would you have a scene where they're all just kind of waiting there, almost dead, like whatever, statues almost. That was kind of like how they were depicted. It was don't get me wrong, beautiful effect, and the nurses were very talented.
Yeah.
Movement artists and stuff like that. But the scene was completely unnecessary as scripted.
Oh no, it's actually too. That was a good testament to, I guess, the performers and the nurses because they stood
the way they
almost perfectly still. They were. I mean, when the camera kind of panned, I could, it was clear that they were
nurses.
Yeah, there were people in there, so being able to kind of like start and stop.
There were other ways you could have done that
right.
scene. If you wanted to do a scene like that, there were other ways you could have done it. That's all I'm saying. And there were ways that could have made sense along the lines of the story. There was another scene earlier in the movie where there was an altercation, and I don't want to go into it again because of spoilers and stuff like that. I don't want to tease with what's been going on. I thought it was alright. I thought it was an alright scene. I liked that scene quite a bit. It was almost like, I guess you would depict almost like a boss fight, basically.
That's basically kind of how the game or the films.
Mm-hmm.
The game. Let's go with that. Actually.
You use this term, yeah.
Because it was kind of like, okay, you get to a location, you find your item to continue, but first boss fight.
Mm-hmm.
Then go to the next location, find the item, boss fight. So
this movie definitely had that.
So that was really the feel for it, and that kind of makes me nervous for people saying they wanted a Legend of Zelda movie. It's like, oh, that probably might be how the movie's gonna be. So no, I don't want a Legend of Zelda movie. That's how it's gonna be. Mm-hmm. And if that's how they chose to adapt Silent Hill, so I mean.
Well, we kind of have to wrap this up now.
But anyways, I guess in short, let's
talk about the ending without spoiling anything.
Well, we don't need to talk about the ending, but I guess ultimately our final thoughts.
Okay. Overall, I thought it was kind of a harmless movie. I don't think I would end up picking it up on DVD or Blu-ray unless two things happened. It was either a very packed special edition release.
Ultimately, the movie neither harmed nor offended. It's neither thumbs up, neither thumbs down. It's no thumbs. I probably would have been better off just playing Silent Hill 3.
Because you actually said at the end of it, it was like, well, you know what I maybe want to do? Maybe want to play Silent Hill 3 now.
Yeah. So.
Go see it if you really want to. It's a harmless movie. It's kind of cool to see because of Halloween and everything else. It's got some good visuals. It has kind of a broken story. I like the ending. We did like the ending.
The ending was, it ended pretty well.
The denouement to it was pretty decent.
It did have the ending did bombard you with two nods to,
some Silent Hill games and
other Silent Hill references.
There were some other Silent Hill references. They made me smile in the ending. I like that.
So not too cheesy, but handled pretty well. And then it gave at least two options for potential sequels. One which could be a spiritual sequel to Silent Hill 2 of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be exactly that, but kind of a nod to that. And I guess another Silent Hill game. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. This is Maniac and Twitch, GameAccess.net. Over and out.